Live and all right. On the latest episode of the Big Show, they're 2 weeks before Christmas, and the guilds are giving the studios the gifts of nominations. Critics' Choice, the Golden Globes, and the Black Reel Awards have unveiled their nominations, and we'll discuss which films are squarely in play this award season. Plus, we have several new releases, including Avatar, The Way of the Water, Kindred, and The Recruit to talk about on the show. We'll have all that and more on episode 518, Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. Let's go. All right, and welcome to the latest episode of Keeping It Real with FilmGordon. I am Tim Gordon, and I am joined by co-host Charles Kirkland Jr. Charles, how are you, sir?
It's a rainy day in D.C.
That it is, and cold. And also joining us, special guest today, is colleague nominating chairperson / chairman of the Black Reel Awards, which were announced today. We have Cordell Martin in the house, which we don't get a lot of Cordell. So, if you at home, this is a treat. Cordell Martin joins us, coming straight out of Indiana. What's going on, Cordell?
Well, how about yourself?
Hey man, it's been a wild day today, man. So we're gonna jump right into it, Charles. Charles, of course, the person who is the architect of the wonderful press release that was put out earlier today. Black Reel Awards were announced, 14 nominations, both for Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, as well as The Woman King, 11 nominations for Till, and 10 nominations for The Inspection. So we had 4 films this year that did double-digit nominations, excuse me. I was looking online today, Cordell, as the nominations were released earlier this morning. And Cordell wasn't around, so I was giving him an update. And Cordell, did you get a chance to read through any of this stuff that, you saw on social media today?
Yeah, I've been skimming through a lot of the comments and a lot of the love on social media. As we were talking, definitely a lot of love for Letitia Wright for her performance in Wakanda Forever.
She's the people's choice. You know what? We toy around every year with the idea of not necessarily letting the vote count, but just wanting to know what the audience thinks. And I believe if we had a People's Choice ballot in that category, she beat Viola Davis and Danielle Deadwyler, which sounds nutty. But to your earlier point, more people have probably seen Black Panther Wakanda Forever than they've seen The Woman King or if they've seen Till. So that was the category that got a lot of attention. But the one category that I loved, I told you, Cordell, was Best Supporting Actress. And man, you've got who's in that category? It's
this one. And Bedu from The Woman King. You have Keke Palmer from Nope, Gabrielle Union from The Inspection, Angela Bassett, Wakanda Forever, and Janelle Monáe for Glass Onion.
Whoa! So I saw somebody write, man, I don't know. My head hurts even thinking about it, and my head is the same way. I mean, you could literally make a case. Of course, I would never say who I think would probably be over the other, but you could literally make a case for any one of those 5 people. I mean, it's not out of the complete realm of possibility to go, nah. No, everybody in that category is really, really good. And I remember calling Cordell, Charles, when I left the screening in Toronto of The Inspection, actually the world premiere in Toronto of The Inspection. I was like, yo, man, Gabrielle Union is serious. She could get some play. And apparently the voters agreed, and she got nominated today. So I was really happy for her. What other surprises, Cordell, have you seen from the vote and the nominations that were announced today?
I would say probably one surprise for me was probably the lack of love for Emancipation. I think on paper, that would have been a movie that would have done really well with our awards. I think also with Will Smith's performance, I thought he would have been a lock for a nomination. However, I think probably timing hurt the film because it was released towards the end of our voting period. So a lot of our votes already came in earlier in that week. which hindered a lot of their nominations. But then also,
Looking at
Will,
Charles's face, I'm sorry.
and then also with the controversy from, Will, you just kind of play that as another factor to it. So why he probably got snubbed in the film as a whole.
Charles?
I think the second reason is better than the first. I think everyone saw Emancipation enough time to decide whether this was a good performance or not. I think it's just politics right now for him, for what happened at the Oscars. I think you're right that he should have been nominated for this work, but people mad with him.
Well, it's funny. You said not enough people saw it. Charmaine Bingwa got nominated.
How about that?
and trust me, I'm not being funny. I love Charmaine Bingwa, and I've loved her since The Good Fight. If Charmaine Bingwa got nominated, Will Smith should got nominated.
Yeah, true, but then you also look at the categories too. Breakthrough. I don't know. I'm trying to. I give up.
No, but I think to be perfect, guys, I'm laughing. I think Charles is absolutely right because I've got several close friends in my circle who will not watch Emancipation. They have not forgiven Will Smith from the events that happened early this year, and I think that paints that along with the genre, because it's kind of hard to explain to people, right? Because people are thinking about trauma, right? And I remember Charles and I, before we even saw it, we were like, oh man, we got to see another one of these movies. But when you go in there, it's not that, right? So it's like The Fugitive, like my explanation, The Fugitive and Glory, or The Fugitive set in slavery for the first two acts and then Glory in the third act. So it's not the prototypical kind of, no, it's not that kind of slavery film. But the fact of that is Will Smith, and it's the events of early this year, and Apple. I mean, let's just call it what it is, man. Apple Will said, I want the movie released this year. Apple said, okay. They released it, but they didn't really do any push for the movie. I mean, there's more of a push for Till than it is for Emancipation. There's more of a push. There's several movies that there's more of a push from, and in a film that has a director who has directed a Denzel Washington in Training Day and Antoine Fuqua, a star of Will Smith's magnitude, that under different circumstances, that should have been a huge push. And to Cordell's point, would have easily been a film that would have upended one of the other films that did get nominated today. Emancipation would have been in there under any other circumstance. So, hey, man, sometimes in films, as we've seen, Cordell and I have seen over the course of doing this for 2 decades, sometimes stuff happens, man. I mean, we've had situations, I'm not going to say it, man, but you know what film I'm talking about. There was a film several years ago that I was really behind, and that film got hamstrung in the middle of the process, man. I mean, it happens, man. Denzel Washington made a movie several years ago that looked good on paper. We saw it. We thought Denzel was the man, and then the powers that be, people started spreading around like, man, that's a stage play, But The Whale's a stage play. I mean, you can find something every year. But I say all that to say, man, you're right. That is one of probably the biggest surprises of the day, that that film got 2 nominations. Fuqua didn't get nominated. Smith didn't get nominated. Charmaine Bingwa got nominated. Go figure. I can't figure that one out. So, Charles, any surprises for you other than that?
I would have said the same thing about Will Smith being a surprise, but it wasn't really that much of a surprise. I was anticipating him to be nominated, that people would look past what it was, but when he didn't get it, I wasn't surprised. I knew what the deal was altogether. I am surprised to see a lot of love for Honk for Jesus Save Your Soul. I mean, it's a really great film, but I was surprised that people took to it because I know there's a few people I know that really didn't like the film at all. But I was on the fence. I thought it had a great first two acts. The third act, it kind of fell apart. And so, you know, I championed this film for quite a while, and so I'm happy to see that that it got the love that I wanted it to get.
Well, Cordell and I had this conversation, and again, I've been saying it to Charles. I've been saying it to colleagues. I've said it to Cordell. 2022 is a very odd year in film, right? There's like, even if somebody pinned me in a corner right now and said, Tim, give me your top 5 or top 10 films of the year, I probably couldn't do it because I don't think I've seen anything great this year. I've seen a bunch of good movies, but there's nothing that like, that's a movie. That's the movie. That's the movie. There's none of that. So Honk for Jesus slides in because, you know, we're top heavy this year, right? So when you think about, Cordell and I talk about this endlessly for months, right? So we'll have conversations early as March. Cordell, what are you seeing? What do you think we're going to be looking at later this year? Or we'll get to June or July. And this year we knew The Woman King was coming. We knew that Black Panther was coming. We knew, I didn't even think Till was going to do what it did this year. I was surprised by Till. So when I get to my surprises, I'll talk about that one. But Honk for Jesus is one of those films that in an ordinary year, if there were like a bunch of strong contenders, I'm not saying it would have been shut out, but I don't think it gets, what did it get, 7 nominations this year, Cordell?
7 nominations.
Yeah.
Yep.
7 nominations is not significant. I said that way on purpose. 7 nominations is pretty significant, right? You know, so that's a film that's like a major player. Honk for Jesus is a good film, and I wouldn't knock it. I enjoyed it when I watched it, but when you look at the pedigree of some of the other films, I'm like, again, I don't know. I'm not slamming the film because it's one of our movies. But I mean, Charles, Cordell, you understand what I'm saying? In a normal year, that's a movie that might get 4 nominations or 3 nominations because it would be so competitive with some other work. But in 2022, we didn't have that deep bench in those films. So hence you get Honk for Jesus with 7 nods this year.
And I think also it goes to accessibility. Having that film on Peacock, which is free to a lot of viewers at home.
Right.
I think that helped it, and also with it coming out early fall, a lot of people were buzzing about it. A lot of people, you know, watched it, and I know Regina Hall, she's kind of in that, you know, second phase of her career where she's getting a lot of love and attention. I mean, Sterling K. Brown's coming off of This Is Us, so they already had that name recognition, and with the director, with her being new, a lot of those nominations came from like your first screenplay nomination or emerging director. So not surprised based on the nominations and based on who was recognized for the film, but also just goes back to accessibility. And that was one of the things with Emancipation, as we talked about, Apple really dropping the ball in terms of really pushing it. This shows when you push your film, you'll be recognized for it.
So and you're right. They did a wonderful job. Peacock did a wonderful job. Every time you turn around, you saw something about Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul. So it was everywhere to be seen. The other big surprise for me was I really thought that Tyler Perry would have pulled down a screenplay nomination for
Jazz Man's Blues.
I think it only got maybe 2 or 3. I think it was 2 nominations over the course of, and so I really wanted him to get a nomination to reward him for actually turning in a great screenplay.
Well, you know, I'm gonna tell you what happened with Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry was a victim that he didn't have enough star power in his movie. I mean, exactly. I just need to say it that way because if you look at the history of our awards, even in breakthrough categories, you know, it's usually a showy. It's not necessarily a showy performance, but there's a name involved with somebody, right? And name one outside of Amira Van, who's in the movie, who's probably the most notable person. Who else is in this movie that you even know by name?
Nobody,
I mean, seriously, I'm not being funny. I mean, it just
I'm neither am I, and I think that's what Cordell was saying about Honk for Jesus Save Your Soul. We had Sterling K. Brown and Regina,
Hall.
If you had one of those names attached to Tyler Perry's film, it would have gotten a lot more love than what it did. So
you think about Danielle. You think about Danielle Deadweiler, who was in A Hard Day Fall. You think about. I'm trying to think through some of the films that were nominated. I mean, you think through every film. There's some stars. Even in a film like The Inspection, Jeremy Pope did Hollywood on Netflix a couple of years ago. Gabrielle Union, Bokeem Woodbine, all three of them got nominated. So, and it's not to say that it's a process that you have to have a big name to be nominated, but when you got a whole bunch of names, and then there's some people that nobody knows, it's a lot easier to go as the line from The Distinguished Gentleman with the name you know.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, or you need to be a part of a big film or franchise. So you look at someone like Dominique Thorne, who's nominated for Breakthrough Actress. I mean, with her having that Black Panther vehicle behind her, that helped her, as opposed to she was in a smaller film like Till or The Inspection, where you wouldn't know who she was unless she was a star or was getting pushed by the studios for awards contention.
Jalen Hall got nominated from Till. He was in a breakthrough category. So I'm with Cordell. I mean, I'm sorry, not Cordell. I'm with Charles that I enjoyed A Jazz Man's Blues. I mean, so I thought Tyler Perry should have got some sort of notoriety. But think about if Creed 3 had been included in this year's pool, and also Chevalier, which was the Kelvin Harrison movie that I saw in Toronto. Now we're having a different conversation around nominations because some of those two films would have taken up some of the real estate that we talked about. Films like Honk for Jesus. Nanny was actually a really good film, and I was glad to see that Nanny got some play. But again, Nanny dropped at Sundance, and hasn't Nanny been on television, or is it on what streaming platform?
I think it premieres today on Amazon.
Does it really?
Yeah.
It's today or sometime this week. It premiered. Yeah, I know.
And I feel like I've been watching Nanny since January. what is going on with Nanny?
It's played more than one festival. I mean, it's been at more than one place. So I mean, every time you turn around,
Sundance, Tribeca, Middleburg. I mean, it literally has played festivals in every quarter of the year, which I find which doesn't happen a lot. I mean, think about that for a second. That is such an anomaly to me of the marketing campaign and the smartness of the people behind Nanny. It's a really good film. Really
and like you said, they smartly marketed. I mean, they knew they were dropping it late, so they just kept it on people's lips, showing it over and over again at a festival. So the people who knew had seen it.
So hold on one second. We got Cordell for a couple more minutes. Cordell, give me some factoids on today's nominations, man, because that's Cordell is like a human machine when it comes to the Black Reel Award. Give me some of this stuff, because again, I think Gina Prince Bythewood, let's start there. She got her her fourth nomination, but we had three of the nominees had won in the outstanding directors category, have won 2 Black Reel Awards each. So talk about a little bit about that, Cordell.
Yeah, so Gina is tied currently with Jordan Peele, Ryan Coogler, and Ava DuVernay for the most wins for Best Director. They each have 2 wins. So if Ryan, Gina, or Jordan wins this year, they will break the record for most wins in that category. Gina also sets the record for the most nominations in that category by a woman. As we just mentioned, this was her 4th nomination. She's been nominated before for Beyond the Lights, Love and Basketball, and The Secret Life of Bees, and she won for the latter 2 of those 3 nominated films.
All right. Any other things that we should be looking forward to in February?
Let's see. So for Outstanding Actress, Viola Davis is now the most nominated person in that category. She was tied with Halle Berry and Sanaa Lathan, with 5 nominations. So with The Woman King, this makes her 6th nomination. If she wins in this category, she'll be the most honored person in that category with 3 wins. And then she would tie with Denzel Washington for the most acting wins. So she's at 4 acting wins right now. Denzel holds the record with 5. So
Wow.
Wow,
So,
come on,
so, but
Bible,
that's
come
not.
through,
But
baby.
that's lead and support. Am I correct?
Yep. So she's won in both lead and supporting, two
Yeah.
apiece.
How many supporting actor black reels does Denzel Washington have?
Yeah.
Exactly. None. Denzel Washington is Denzel Washington. So
But you got to also look at their careers. I mean, Denzel was already an established, actor by the time the Black Reel Awards wasn't to play. I mean, Viola came onto the scene, mid 2000s and kind of worked her way up the Hollywood ladder.
all I'm saying is after 1989, Denzel Washington, anytime you saw his name, he was the lead. Even in Philadelphia, when him and Tom Hanks were together, he was still a lead. So he was not the support in Philadelphia, even though. But I got your point, man. So give me one last factoid, man, because I got to get 3 out of you before you leave.
No, let's see. Let's see. There's another good one.
Yeah, he cheating today, Charles. He reading it and stuff. He knows this stuff.
Look to find one that's interesting. Oh, another one that I found interesting was for outstanding original song. This is the first time ever in which all of the performers of each song were sung by women. So in the past, we've had a mix of both men and women nominated, but all women. So you got 2 songs by Rihanna, song by Jasmine Sullivan, a song by Jesse Wilson and Angelique Kiddo, and then Ruth B for a song for a Jasmine Blues. So,
well, before we let you go,
and also on top of that, a woman wrote participated in the writing of each one of the songs.
Right. But I was gonna say one of the things that I always find very interesting, right? A couple of years ago, Golden Globes got in trouble because they didn't have enough color in their organization and not enough women. And Cordell and I talk about this all the time. We have been trailblazers for years in that. I mean, we've had years where there were 3, like we have 5 nominees. We'll have more women nominees than we'll have guys. I mean, it's so routine now that like when you say it now, it's like, 5, like all 5 of the outstanding song nominees are all women, and all of the songs are written by. Yeah, sisters have been doing it for themselves in the Black Reel Awards for a minute, and we applaud y'all. So I bet if we ever went through Cordell and went through the directors, because I just heard you talking about Gina Prince Bythewood, and you're talking about Coogler and some of these other guys. Between Ava and Gina Prince Bythewood, I mean, they've done pretty well in the director's race, along with some other people that we've had in it, Tanya Hamilton's and some other folks that we've had, over the course of 20 some odd years. So, hey, man.
We need to start a hashtag Black Reel Loves Women.
There we go.
You don't have to start it. I mean, it's already there. I mean, you do the research. You can see it for yourself. We're not trying to jump on it, but it's true. But Cordell, I want to thank you for coming on. I know you got to run. Charles and we will hold a bucket up, but the 23rd annual Black Reel Awards will stream on Monday night, February the 6th. We're going to announce some honorees, and we've already talked about the theme of women. There'll be a lot of women. A lot of women. So, yeah, bro, we will talk to you soon. We'll keep monitoring, and I'll give you a call after the show, man.
All right, have a good night, guys.
All right, you take care. All right, man. All right, and of course, that's Cordell Martin, the nominating chairman or chairperson of the Black Reel Awards, man. Charles, I was very, very excited today. I know you haven't had a chance yet to go through social media, but to your point, man, there was a lot of love. We talked about it earlier for Letitia Wright, and I kept going. It was like, yeah, people were writing, yeah, teach for the win. I was like, word. I'm not saying that Tish. I don't watch this. I don't have a vote. So if Letitia Wright, there ain't enough of the voting academy that thinks that Letitia Wright should be honored in that way, I would support that. But I just think it's a strong feel, unlike the look on Charles Kirkland's face. It's a strong field of nominees this year.
I love Letitia Wright. I really do. But and if she pulls this out, something I don't know. Something happened. Something happened. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, let's talk about. So we talked about our.
I mean, that category. I don't want to throw any shade on Letitia Wright, but that outstanding actress category is stacked. You got Viola Davis, you got Danielle Deadwyler, Anna Diop, and Regina Hall in there with her. And I dare say, wow, this is another stacked category for us in the Black Reel Awards. And Letitia Wright is in some deep waters in that category.
Well, I mean, let's call it what it is, man. I mean, if you look at both the lead actress category and the supporting actress category, and you put those 10 names together, and you had to select 2 out of that, one in each category. That's real tough because as tough as you're talking about outstanding actresses, I think outstanding supporting actress might be even more competitive because as I look across the board, man, I mean, Thuso is really good in The Woman King, right? The Woman King, to me, was so good that Lashana Lynch, you could have made a case that Lashana Lynch should have been nominated in that category and didn't get nominated. When you look at Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, no Denai Guerrera, no Lupita Nyong'o, no. I mean, so there were people who I thought that was a really, really strong category this year. It really was. So I don't even call those snubs. I'm just like, I think that the 5 they got were the best 5 because I thought Gabrielle Union deserved a spot and she got one. I thought that I mean, Angela Bassett wasn't even about deserving the spot. Angela Bassett is just she's regal as Queen Ramonda in Wakanda Forever. She's great. So like I said, man, the thing that scared me initially though, Charles, is I thought they were going to put Queen Ramonda as Angela Bassett as a lead and have her go opposite Viola Davis. And I was like, woo, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Because I thought both of those women were strong. So, like I said, man, but let's talk a little bit about some of the other award shows that happened this week. And, without going into a lot of detail, I don't even want to address the Golden Globes because I've kind of treated this show like it's not happening. But the one thing I will say, which I thought was, what's the best way to say this without it coming back to bite me in the butt? The Golden Globes, as you know, 3 years ago, Charles, had a lot of issues with diversity, right? So I've had people call me, and you and I haven't had these conversations, but I had people call me who were critics and were like, yo, man, the Globes called me and wanted me to be a voter at the Globes, but I told them if they're not paying me what they paying them other people, I'm not going to do it, right? So I said, yeah, I got it. So the Globes, if you remember the first year when they went virtual, when they were off the air, they partnered with the NAACP, which like I said, man, I'm sure that the HFPA wrote the NAACP a big check, and they were like, yeah, we'll help you with your diversity issue, right? So now for this show, Charles, they're coming back after a year absence. They have a Black host in Gerard Carmichael. Okay, I see you, Globes. I see what you're doing. So then yesterday, I'm minding my business, and a press release comes across, and Eddie Murphy is getting the Cecil B. DeMille. And I said, all right, Globes, I see you. Now let's be honest, right? And again, this show is called Keeping It Real. So I'm always 100 with what I'm saying, right? So I'm not saying stuff just to stir up attention. So I preference what I'm about to say with this. You and I both talk comedy on this show a lot, right? We talk about Murphy and we talk about Pryor and we talk about Carlin. Eddie Murphy is in that conversation, right?
Right.
Now, Charles, I could be wrong, right? Tell me if I'm wrong. Do either of us consider Eddie Murphy to be a great actor?
No. I
I want to make sure I'm hitting this correctly. Eddie Murphy, I enjoy him. But when I think about great actors, I'm thinking about Washington, Fishburne, Jeffrey Wright. I'm talking about among peers, right? Cheadle. I'm thinking about folks who are actors. Who else is another good actor? I think Will Smith is okay, but I wouldn't put Will Smith on a level with a Fishburne and a Washington and even a Snipes as an actor. I think all three of those dudes are better actors. Is there anybody else that we consider a real? Mahershala Ali is a good actor. Daniel Kaluuya is a good actor. I mean, give me some more names of people that
Jamie Foxx is a great actor, I think.
Okay. See, now this is a good one. Jamie Foxx, who's also a comedian, did Ray. He was in Ali. Yes, Jamie. I would say Jamie Foxx is a really good actor, but I would put him a notch below the people that we're talking about. But he's a notch above what I think Eddie Murphy is. Okay. I would say that much. Yeah. I think Jamie Foxx is a really fine actor. I don't think Eddie, like if I'm thinking about an actor who can kind of like morph into almost anything, even though he did have one year where he played 3 roles, Collateral, Ray. Jamie Foxx is a really good actor. All right, so Fox, we could even put Fox in there, right? Or Forrest Whitaker. I mean, I'm thinking about guys who I think are really good actors, right?
Oh, and let's Eddie Murphy's
Samuel L. Jackson, right? So thinking about all that, they're giving Eddie Murphy the Cecil B. DeMille. So I just really want to point this out, man, because I don't want you getting mad at me or people at home going, Tim is tripping. No, Tim is not tripping. Tim sees a thing and sees what somebody's trying to do. And I'm looking up Cecil B. DeMille right now. And the honorees of the Cecil B. DeMille Award from the Golden Globes. All right, Charles. I can just tell you the last Black person to win the Cecil B. DeMille, I think, was Denzel Washington. I could be wrong. No, I'm sorry. I am wrong. Oprah Winfrey, right? So they gave the last one to Jane Fonda. Goes without saying, Tom Hanks, Jeff Bridges, Oprah Winfrey, Meryl Streep, Denzel Washington. These are the people that have won the Cecil B. DeMille. So you're hearing the names, right? Clooney, Freeman, Jodie Foster, De Niro, Scorsese. Eddie Murphy is the Cecil B. DeMille honoree this year. Now, Charles, is it me? Am I taking a big leap by saying, yes, Eddie Murphy is legendary, right? Not the greatest of actors. They're giving him the highest honor in the Golden Globes. And I'm thinking, is it deserved or is it because they want to make sure that there are more, they're being more diverse, i.e. more Black people in the Golden Globes? Literally, that's exactly where I'm at with this.
I think the best way you could equate this is looking back at Oprah Winfrey as also being a Cecil B. DeMille Award winner. Oprah is a very good actress. However, the amount of roles that she has played, I don't think really puts her in that.
But you're not giving Oprah Winfrey the Cecil B. DeMille Award for her acting. You're giving her for her entire body of who she is,
exactly,
right? Media.
Exactly.
And again, if that's the case,
you're not giving it to her for her acting. You're giving it to her, encompassing her whole thing. So you're thinking of Eddie Murphy. You're thinking about everything that Eddie Murphy is, and as far as the comedian and all these other things. So he's not the greatest actor, but he's done a lot in the industry. I think that's the best way you can equate or rationalize Eddie Murphy getting this award.
So let me ask you a question, and I'm not being out of school. If that's the case, and you just wanted to really get an actor that we wouldn't even question, why not give it to Samuel L. Jackson? He literally just got an Oscar like a month ago. Give it to Sam Jackson. He's 73. He's been in over 150, 160 movies. Give it to Lawrence Fishburne, another guy we just honored earlier this year. So again, not knocking Eddie Murphy, right? I love Eddie Murphy. Trust me, I do. Charles and I talk about this all the time. But it seems like it was clearly an attempt to get eyes on the show, because folks love Eddie Murphy, and if Eddie Murphy's on something, folks are going to watch it. So the sexiness of his name is a lot of the appeal of why the Golden Globes wanted him, but it's just an odd choice unless you're using the Oprah Winfrey argument that we're gonna award him for his body of work. But normally the Cecil B. DeMille is about great actors or folks who are great producers. And in this case, that's not, Murphy is neither of those. That's all I'm saying.
And I agree. But if you're looking, like I said, the only way I can rationalize it and that you can rationalize it is it's not just for his acting, it's for everything that he is, including the name Eddie Murphy. So when you say Eddie Murphy, people are like, what? Yeah, I'm gonna check it out. Okay,
so one last disclaimer before I get off the air. If Eddie Murphy watches this, or anybody that's connected with Eddie Murphy watches this, Tim Gordon does not dislike Eddie Murphy. Tim Gordon doesn't think, this is not about me not thinking that you don't deserve this prize. It's thinking that the Globes are trying to profit and benefit off the name versus they could have got somebody, I think, that would have fit more into the texture of what the award was really about. That's all I'm saying. So I'm saying it only for that, but there's no hate with Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy means a significant part of my childhood, and I felt compelled to have to explain that because I didn't want people at home thinking, man, he hating on Eddie Murphy, because you know what society we're in right now.
Yeah.
I mean, but hating on it. No, he's not.
People can take us a little out of context, but if they go back a couple episodes, we were talking about Eddie Murphy as one of the greatest comedians of all time. Not just maybe 2 episodes ago, where we were talking about Pryor. He's right up there. So I mean, we have deep love for Eddie Murphy. So yeah, don't get it twisted. You can come for Tim, but not for me. Don't come for me.
I love Charles. Charles, like, don't come for me. All right, Charles. It is review time. Okay, yeah. Ooh, that's pretty bad. I just got a bad email. I'll share what that email meant a little later on, Charles. All right, man. So you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
We're gonna go in inverse order, man. And first up, Charles, is The Recruit. A spy adventure television series created by Alexi Hawley that premieres on Netflix tomorrow. The series follows a fledgling CIA lawyer who gets caught up in a dangerous game of international politics when a former asset threatens to expose the nature of her relationship with the agency unless they clear her name. Series stars Noah Centineo, Artie Mann. I should know these names. I talked to him earlier this week. Daniel Quincy Addoy, Bonnie Curtis Hall, Christian Brunn, Laura Haddock, who plays the one of the stars, Colton Dunn, and Fievel Stewart. And the story we're going to talk about really revolves around 2 people, Noah Centineo, who plays Owen, and Laura Haddock, who plays Max, right? So, Charles, I thought, and I said this because I interviewed both of them earlier this week, that, we watch a lot of these kind of shows, these espionage shows, The End Game and this show and that show. And I think what was interesting about this is for a person who does what we do, or people who do what we do, when you introduce me to a new term in your show that I had never heard before, what is gray mail? Like, have you ever heard that used before? Any point?
Well, fortunately, I have worked in federal government, and so yeah, I had an idea. I knew what gray mail was. So yeah.
Okay, I had never heard of gray mail before, and so instantly you got my attention, because I'm like, well, what the heck is this? And they built like an entire 8-episode arc around this new kid who literally, as the show starts, is on his 2nd day in the CIA. Yeah. And he walks in and they give him all of the little, the boo-boo details. And one of the details was a stack of folders called the Crazies. Just go through there and find out if there's anybody threatening the government. And unlike all the other people who had this folder who just kind of dismissed it, he actually went through it and found something, which is hence the series that we're watching about a young lady who's in jail and has some secrets against the government. And Charles, it has a lot of twists and turns. You can't trust anybody. Everybody is suspicious. Everybody has their own motives. Everybody is looking out for their own self-interest. And here's this kid who doesn't have a lot of experience, but I wouldn't even call what he has a lot of street smarts. He has just a lot of intelligence and thinks really fast on his feet and does a really good job in this show. And you know, without saying it, I think it has all of the international elements that we know. Some of the show was filmed in DC, hence the premiere, which was done down at the Spy Museum in DC earlier this week. Over in Vienna, some parts of the in the domestic parts of the country. I thought that The Recruit, and I have to say this for Netflix, because Netflix went through a period about a year or two ago during the pandemic, Charles, when they just had so much content out. And some of the content was bad. Like, I was like, man, these shows are just not good. But recently, Netflix has stepped the game up. Every one of these things are hitting. And The Recruit is another one, not the sexiest name, but a really watchable show. I enjoyed it. I gave it a B. Was leaning toward a B+, but a B, and a solid B because of the chemistry between Centineo and Haddock, the storytelling of Alexi Hawley, and when I say storytelling, he was the screenwriter. And was he the screenwriter, showrunner?
It's both, yes.
Yeah, so I thought he did a really good job with the screenplay. Talked to him about that earlier this week. So that's what I think. What do you think about The Recruit?
Okay, you forgot to mention that Doug Liman also directed like the first 2 or 3 episodes of this series. So, you know, you got the guy who did the Bourne Supremacy.
I didn't forget. I knew you were gonna hit it. That's why I did that way. But go ahead.
So he throws his hand into this as well, and so I really enjoyed the tone because we've seen all these shows where you got your super spy guy who's going in there and doing all these crazy things. It was really refreshing to see just like an average Joe, because that's literally what he is. He's been, like you said, he's been in the CIA for all of 2 days, and he's thrust into this international whatever. And just to see not just how crazy it is for just a regular guy to do this, but how cutthroat the world of the CIA is. And you would think, you know, they'd be banding together to defeat whatever. But I mean, there's lots of little infightings that goes on, which I thought was really smart and different from what we had seen in almost anything before this. So I like you. This was a refreshing tone for me. I like the film. I like the series. I like where it went, how it developed, and I gave it a B as well. This is a sneaky surprise for Netflix. I'm sitting at the premiere that they do at the Spy Museum that you spoke of, and you got people from the FBI and CIA. A former director of the FBI is sitting in the audience watching this film, and they're all raving about this film. So I mean, about this series. So I think this is something special. I think I really like it. If I watch it again, I might bump it up to a B+, but it's a solid B, maybe more for me as well.
All right, so The Recruit debuts on Netflix on Friday, February the 16th. So you check it out and you make your own appraisal. All right, Charles, we're moving on to our next story, and this one is from Kindred, and this is on Hulu right now, and adapted from the celebrated novel of the same name by Hugo Award winner Octavia E. Butler. This FX series centers on Dana James, a young Black woman, an inspiring writer who's uprooted her life of familiar obligation and relocated to Los Angeles. Before she can settle into her new home, she finds herself being violently pulled back and forth in time, right? So the synopsis alone, I was like, yeah, I got to see this, man. So Kindred stars Mallory Johnson as Dana James, Micah Stock as Kevin Franklin, And Charles, did you get a chance to watch this, or I got to go solo on Kindred?
You're gonna have to go solo on it because I have not watched it. I've seen the trailer and I got a little Alice feel out of it, but I haven't seen it yet. So tell me what you think of Kindred.
Let me tell you, this is interesting, man. So I go in, and I'd never read the novel, but I know who Octavia Butler is, and I know how she writes and what she writes about. And in this story, man, which I find to be very interesting, and it is not Alice by any means, but it reminds me of About Time. Do you remember that one? The one with
yeah.
The one about the family. There's something about the men in the family that they can all travel back in time, but they can only travel within their own time, kind of like their own time space, where they go sit in the closet in the dark, ball up their fists, and then imagine, and then they open the closet up, and then they're back.
And they're there. Yeah.
Right. So this story is about a young girl who, without any warning, now we know that she lost her mother in an accident like maybe 20 years earlier, right? Where her mother seemingly just disappeared, Charles. Mm-hmm. And they never found the body. So, she's grieving the loss of her mother. And come to find out one night, she meets this kid. She's brand new in LA. She meets this guy. She brings him home. And of course, they get familiar with one another. And she, in the middle of the night, gets up, sees a cat, hears a cat, picks up the cat. And the next thing you know, man, she is transported back to 18. So the story takes place in 2016, right? When you go with Kindred, right? She's transported back in time to 1815 to suppose, and she doesn't understand why she's there, but she sees this little boy, the son of the plantation guy, his name is Rufus, white kid. She saves Rufus, and suddenly, it seems like she's there, Charles, maybe about an hour. She's pulled back to 2016, and it's been a minute since she was gone. And this kind of is the pattern of the show. As you watch it, and I don't want to really give too much of it away because I want you to watch it, but there's a trigger that gets her back. So every time she's pulled into the past, she's always pulled to the same place or to the same vicinity, the same plantation. Mm-hmm. And she's being pulled there for a reason, which over the course of the 8 episodes, you will start to understand. But every time she comes back, no matter when she comes back, she always ends up in the same spot in her house, right? So she's got an aunt who is who was the sister of her mother who disappears. You come to find out that her mother, who disappeared and everybody's assumed dead, is actually not dead. She's actually in 1815, and the daughter sees the mother every time she goes back. And then they can't figure out whether she can take people with her, but you figure out that, yeah, she can. So it's a very interesting thing now. But what I will say, Charles, as after watching it, and I was confused because I thought I was watching the episode 7 of 8 and discovered I was watching episode 8. And I went, oh, that's a great cliffhanger. They really gave you a good cliffhanger, because I was like, wait, there's not another episode? That's it? But I will say this, there are a lot of people complaining that the show they made changes from the book to the show, and that the show is not representative of Octavia Butler's book, which I could possibly believe that that's the case. And I'm open, but since I didn't read the book, I almost feel like when we talk about these comic films, right? I didn't read the source material. I just watched the story. The story, I feel, is not Alice. I do think that there are a couple of episodes that are extemporaneous. It's just too much, man. You could have wrapped this up in a way where, they spend far too much time in the past for me. Like, you got to get out of there, man. Like 1815 or any time that it was slavery, Charles, is sort of like, I don't want to use something crude, like use a state, because there's a state that I feel that way about. Like, it's good to visit, but I don't really want to live there. It feels like it's a good place to visit for like a hot second, But you don't want to spend time walking around familiarizing yourself in 1815. I don't want to eat the food. I don't want to wear the clothes. I don't want the treatment. I don't want any of that stuff. And the thing that's funny is that I don't think she understood how to extricate herself out of there. Like she had to be triggered to get out of there. But that was if there's any complaint about the story, it would be that I just think that the story spent far too much time trying to fix stuff or having a savior complex in 1815. You can't save all the slaves. Like if you and I went back in the past, Charles, we got to pick a handful of slaves we can help. And the rest of y'all, I'm not gonna say y'all on your own, but somebody else is coming. They can help you.
That's the next train, partner.
Right? I'm just saying. So Kindred, I thought, was a really interesting series. I would give it a C+ because I've read the people who didn't necessarily like the story. I thought that despite the fact that it has a winning sort of, it's not as ridiculous. It's sci-fi fantasy, right? So it's not Alice. Alice is just, or what was the other one with Janelle Monáe? Antebellum. That was another one. I was like, ugh. Now, this show, Kindred, I think is better than those two, but it still has some holes in it. But you're going to always have holes when we're talking about time travel and going back from present day to slavery. There's always going to be some holes, man. So any comments before we move on to our final film, Charles?
Well, like you said, the age of slavery is not a great place to be unless you have the exit button. If she don't know that, if she don't have the exit button, I'm not trying to be there at all. I'm out. But,
I'm not even gonna say it, man. I actually will say it. Here's one thing I will say, right? If you ever have the ability to time travel, I'm taking Charles Kirkman back to 1815 with me. Like, what are we gonna do? We're gonna sit there and lament together, like, man, this is terrible. Of course we will. But I'm just saying, I think that was another hook that was in the story because it was a woman that went back. So it was different than if it had been a guy. Because a guy, it would have been like horrible to have been a guy. It's horrible to have been a woman there, but there's a certain level of grace. Like we'll put her in the house or we'll put her out in the field, but we're not going to treat her like we're going to treat one of the dudes. Because the dudes, you know, as you saw, and when you watch the story, Charles, as Jay-Z once said, it was a hard knock life. It was a hard knock life in 1815, man. So that was my impressions of Kindred. I'll probably go back and watch it again, but I still think there's a couple of episodes where they could have tightened them up a little bit. And then also, I forgot to tell you, there's a Karen that lives next door to her. She's moved into a new neighborhood. And there's like Miss Kravitz, Karen, who's all in her business. And the woman was doing, the neighbor's doing way too much in this film. Way too much. Like, you call him 5-0 and you send your husband, like, let it go, man. So, yeah, Kindred, C+. It's on FX right now. Go check it out. You let me know if I'm wrong. Maybe you'll enjoy it more than I did. And last but not least, Charles.
Let me ask you this quick question.
Yeah.
If I said, hey, let's go back to 1815, I got a time travel ticket. You want to go? What you want to say?
What one condition? How we getting back? And how long we staying?
Good. You asked too many questions already because I'd have just been like, nah.
Bruh. Look, bruh. I got a guy I go to church with. One time we went out to an event. I said, I thought y'all were going to bring something. He was like, bruh. So I'm going to start doing you like that. Bruh. 15, bruh. All right, so last but not least, man, let's get to Avatar Way of the Water, an epic sci-fi film, sequel to the 2009 film Avatar, both directed by James Cameron. This film tells the story of Jake Sully and Neytiri, who have formed a family and are doing everything to stay together. However, they must leave their home and explore the regions of Pandora. When an ancient threat resurfaces, Jake must fight a difficult war against the humans. You got a bunch of people in this story. Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, Stephen Lang, CCH Pounder, Giovanni Ribisi, Sigourney Weaver, Kate Winslet, Curtis, Edie Falco, Jermaine Clement, Brendan Cow. Where do we start with this movie? I'll make this quick. I shared with Charles, and I'm not sure if Charles had the same experience because we saw it at the same time. They put us in a Dolby theater, different places. Dolby theater, so the sound was great, and they gave us 3D glasses. I don't think, Charles, I've ever had that experience where I had both. Like, I've done 3D, I've done Dolby. I've never done Dolby and 3D, right?
And IMAX.
And IMAX, right? So it looks great. It sounds great. The story, come on, man. It reminded me a lot of the first story. It wasn't this James Cameron, God bless him, and he is a visionary filmmaker, spends a lot of time on the effects and the sound of his movies, much in the same way that Michael Bay in the Transformers. There's certain directors who the story kind of feels secondary to me than the actual effects and how cool stuff looks, right? Am I off base, Charles?
I think you are quite right. Yes, quite right.
Okay. So having said that, I will wrap this up by pretty much saying that the story was nothing special. And it was so nothing special that I believe when he makes the third one, and he will, Charles, let's see, the forest, the ocean, or the water. I guess, what are we going to do next, Charles? The sky? That was that was next.
Oh, okay, let me just say, yeah, I think he's already almost wrapped the third film. He's got plans for 6 films, and the 5th film, they're supposed to be coming to Earth. I don't know. This is the craziest thing I ever heard of, and I don't know. I'm like you. The first Avatar was just okay to me. I thought it was, interesting. It
was visionary because of what he was doing more so than what the story he was telling.
And I thought it was like Pocahontas in space or something like that, where you had the colonizers coming in, taking over the indigenous people's land, and this is what you have in the second film. It's like they didn't learn from the first film. We're going to come back and try it again in the second film and see if it goes any better. And I'm going to just say this right now. The movie is 3 hours and 12 minutes long. 3 hours and 12 minutes long. And 2 of those hours are spent with just telling you the story. Let's just live life with all these people. And it's like, really, dude? Really? I mean, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful film, but there's a few plot holes that are in this film that I'm like, I don't understand.
A few? A few?
Yeah, a few.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. And I'm not going to tell the people what we're talking about. Why did a character save a character that we should have just let die in the movie? That I was sitting there in my seat like this. I'm not understanding what I'm watching here. What was the purpose of that? But when you watch the movie, you'll see what I'm talking about. But yeah, man, Avatar, it was funny. And the other thing that happened, and I explained this to Charles as well, that the film print broke at stopped, I would say, at 1 hour and 30 minutes into it, right? So we sat in the theater in the dark for 35 minutes until they figured out how to fix it. Now, Charles already told you the movie's 3 hours and 12 minutes long, so you add on the extra 35 minutes on top of that. So it was almost like I watched almost a shade of the 4-hour movie, and only to get the resolution that I got, and I was not a happy camper, man. I'll just say that much, man, that I just thought that it feels like much ado about nothing. It looks good, it sounds good, but at the end of the day, much like real estate is about location, 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 good filmmaking is about story, story, story. And if you can put if you put lipstick on a pig, I mean, it's cute and it's a great effect, but it's still a pig. And Avatar: Way of the Water It's lipstick on a pig to me. It's like, it's okay. The story ain't great. But if you want a story that looks good and plays good, sure, that's your movie. Charles?
Now, I'll also say once you get to the action scenes, which is like in the third hour of the movie, it's dynamic. I enjoyed the fight scenes and all that stuff that they were doing, but it took literally 2.5 hours to get to the part where it was exciting. So, and again, like there were so many holes. I'm like, what is going on with this film? And it was just kind of exasperating. It was just a weird feeling because it was such a beautiful film, shot well and sounds great and looks great. But when you look at it, there's no substance to it, and you're just like, okay, I just spent a whole lot of time in the movie theater. So if you feel like spending a whole lot of time in the movie theater, you want to get away from your family, yeah, go ahead. The rumor is that he has to, because of how he filmed this film, he's got to make $2 billion just to break even on it.
Come on, Charles.
That's the story. That's what I've heard. He's got to make $2 billion just to break even on this film. So, wow. I mean, I know they talking about $350 million worldwide in its opening weekend. So, which is coming tomorrow. So we'll see.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm gonna let that wrap up, man. But yeah. So, what did you give this film as a grade? Because I haven't given my grade yet.
Wow. I never really thought about grading this film because it was so academic. I would give it a C+ at the best. I give it a C+. I mean, because it is a beautiful movie, and if you just want to spend time watching a film, I give it a C+. But it really, I'm being generous.
I started to say C, but is there something between a C+ and a C?
Yeah, that's where it is.
Yeah, man. I mean, so Avatar, the Way of the Water. Yeah, a C and 3/4. Avatar, Way of the Water opens tomorrow in theaters nationwide. I don't know what else to tell you, man. I mean, that's pretty much it. So, Charles, we're getting ready to go right now, but there's only one movie left this year that we need to see, and they got a screening of it next week. So we will review that movie next week, along with next week is going to be the worst movies of 2022, which is always one of my favorite shows, man. And this is such an odd year. I don't know what to say. I'm going to get some people to do some worse stuff. So we're going to have a lot of fun on next week's show. But that's all I got today, man. As we tell you guys in closing every week, Charles, see something good at the movies, man.
Before
we recommend anything outside of The Recruit? The Recruit is probably the best thing we recommended today.
Well, rest in peace to Twitch. And if you get a chance, watch The Best Man's Holiday, Final Chapter.
Well, that doesn't open until next week.
Oh, that's right.
Can't talk about that. We would have done that today. We can't talk about that one yet. So, yeah, you can watch that. We'll talk about that next week for you.
Okay, The Recruit. There, you're right. The Recruit.
All right, man. Well, you guys take care. We'll see you guys on the other side. Enjoy your weekend. If you're in DC like us, it's cold and rainy, so just stay inside and find something to watch, man. You guys take care, man. Talk to you soon. Peace. Oh, I think it's too high. Peace.